I was in the middle of a pitch when my Slack blew up with 6 pings from Gerard, then a hard lockout. Just like that, my dashboard vanished. Access revoked by admin. The client, a healthcare logistics firm we'd courted for 18 months, was halfway through asking about implementation milestones when the screen froze. Blank. "Are you still there?" she asked. I smiled, nodded, and told her I'd email the final draft. But I knew, right then, the wolves were already chewing through the door behind me. That's when I knew they'd read the subject line, "Transition to Helix Partners, courtesy notice," and skipped everything after. No context, no thank you, no plan. Just a blind panic swing. Unlock her dashboards, scrape her folders, freeze her email. They didn't even wait for my notice period to finish. My resignation had gone out Friday morning. By Monday at 9:11 a.m., I was locked out of the system I built from scratch. If you're listening to this, take 2 seconds right now to tap subscribe and hit that like. It really keeps this series alive and the team gets to keep making these stories happen. All right, back to it. Here's what most people didn't know: the client tagging structure. I created that with a private subcontractor clause signed off during the merger with Trident Group back in 2019. The logic flows, segment trees, funnel automation, onboarding heuristics, none of it existed before me. All of it ran through a system tied to my personal LLC. I didn't boast about it. I didn't even label it with my name. It was just clean, efficient, protected. Back when Gerard toasted me at the company holiday party, "Your family, Alicia," I'd already been quietly renegotiating my role. That speech was 3 bourbons deep. He called me irreplaceable. I was already 6 months into drafting the Helix exit plan. The truth is, you feel the moment the shift happens, when indispensable becomes inconvenient, when the praise turns hollow and the meetings turn cold. It started small. Budget reviews I wasn't invited to, my team, revenue generating, high retention, surgically tight, sidelined in favor of Gerard's nephew Kyle, who thought client lifecycle meant a TikTok funnel. He'd show up late, talk over women, and confuse renewal metrics with vibes, and I was told to train him. On what? How to spell enterprise SaaS without drooling on his cufflinks? But I played the game. I let him fail upward while I quietly audited everything I'd ever touched. I flagged key approvals, mapped timestamps, rerouted admin control over assets I architected. Nothing shady, just smart. Every strategist worth their salt knows you build your exits at the same time you build your wins. The moment that sealed it, we were in a strategy session, and Kyle called one of my RFPs a client coupon, said we should gamify the proposal. I watched the client rep on the Zoom, VP of procurement at a billion-dollar insurance group, physically wince. She called me directly after the call, didn't even wait 10 minutes, said, and I quote, "If you ever move firms, we're following you." That wasn't a threat, that was a bond. So I moved. 2 weeks notice, no drama. HR asked for an exit interview. I declined. Gerard asked to grab coffee for old time's sake. I said I was already booked. They made a show of pretending they were fine. "Wishing you the best in your next chapter," the email read. Then the moment they realized I'd accepted an offer from Helix, a competitor with better tech and deeper pockets, they dropped the act like a hot plate. The panic hit in waves. First, the Slack lockout. Then Carter, Bennett and Rayner's new legal counsel, pulled the emergency lever. "She's heading to a competitor. Unlock her files. We need every client touch point." He actually said that, out loud, like I didn't have clauses buried deep enough to make an IRS auditor weep. They never read paragraph 4, not even once. And the kicker? The asset clause wasn't even hidden. It sat in plain sight, signed off during the Trident acquisition, buried in a supplemental memo because none of them read the appendices. Clause 4.1. In the event of data extraction during competitive resignation, all proprietary assets linked to strategic accounts shall revert to the managing strategist, voiding non-compete protections, which meant the moment they tried to extract client-linked data from my systems after I resigned, everything reverted to me. Emails, segments, onboarding flows, framework logic, all of it. And they triggered it. I didn't have to fight. I just watched them walk face first into a clause they'd co-signed with a pen dipped in their own arrogance. I didn't gloat. I didn't even correct them when they misspelled my name in the lockout memo. I just texted Carter, 1 sentence. "You'll want to double-check paragraph 4. He never responded. But it sure did. Hard. Folders started locking themselves. Alerts went off. A legal safeguard trigger flagged Carter's admin search attempt. He thought I was bluffing, until he tried to open the funnel sequence model and hit a red banner, protected asset, access denied. That's when Gerard called the emergency meeting. They were still in that meeting when the first Fortune 100 client pulled out. No explanation, just a signed termination. And that's when they realized, I didn't leave empty-handed, I left with what I built. And the law agreed. Gerard's nephew, Kyle, showed up to our first team meeting in Yeezys and a Patagonia vest, acting like he invented CRM. He shook my hand like it was a dead fish and said, Don't worry, I'm not here to replace anyone. Just here to innovate the vibes. That was my first warning. The second came when he renamed our internal tracking board to Sales Playground. Not pipeline, not forecast. Playground. The guy thought client acquisition was a dating app swipe. Just give him a free trial and an emoji drip campaign, he said, waving a stylus like a wand. He pitched dynamic trust algorithms that boiled down to copying LinkedIn job changes and mass blasting them with generic PDFs. The kicker? Gerard sat there beaming like his idiot bloodline was the second coming of Jobs and Wozniak rolled into one dude with a trust fund and a weed pen. Kyle was handed the AI-driven sales lab, which sounded impressive until you realized it was just 2 interns and an unpaid design grad from Milwaukee running ChatGPT prompts through Canva. Meanwhile, my team, who managed over $19 million in ARR, got told we'd be restructured into a support pod. Not even a team, a pod. Like some faceless glob of underpaid back-end tissue meant to hold Kyle's ego upright. And then came the insult layered in patronizing frosting. I was asked to train him. You've got the institutional knowledge, Gerard said, not meeting my eyes. Just a couple of weeks. Bring him up to speed. Get him confident. Bring him up to speed? I'd built the speed. The thing is, I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't storm out. I nodded. Took the meeting invite, ran him through the decks, explained account histories, even looped him into a few calls just to see what would happen. And what happened was exactly what I expected. We were pitching my biggest account, a multinational insurance client I'd managed since their onboarding phase. And Kyle opened the Zoom by saying, So I thought we'd gamify this proposal a bit. Think of it like a client coupon book with tiers. Silence. I watched the SVP on the other end blink, slowly. Then she looked directly at me and said, Alicia, are you driving this? I smiled, muted my mic, and let Kyle fumble. He tried to explain how gamification increased engagement, quoted a half-remembered HBR article, and even tried to show a pie chart in Comic Sans. The call ended 10 minutes early. She called me that night. No small talk. If you ever switch firms, she said, we're coming with you. The whole vertical. There was a long pause. I didn't promise anything. I didn't threaten. But in that quiet beat, something shifted. She'd given me her vote, one I never asked for, but deeply valued. That Friday, I handed in my notice. No fanfare, no rant. I submitted it via the portal, clicked the digital signature, and walked into HR with a printed copy out of courtesy. 2 weeks? They asked. Standard, I said. Plenty of time to transition. I boxed up my things that same afternoon. Not because they asked me to, but because I didn't need to linger anymore. I'd already moved on in every way that mattered. I started auditing my files, making clean breaks, documenting my work for anyone who needed it. I didn't burn a single bridge. I left the wood stacked neatly, out of reach of idiots with matches. Gerard sent a Slack the next morning. Would love to grab lunch before you go. Talk transition. Celebrate all you've done. I didn't reply. Because here's the part they never understand. When a woman like me gets quiet, it's not because she's afraid. It's because she's already left. You just haven't realized it yet. The CFO cornered me near the espresso machine like he was about to confess to a murder. You know your client list is corporate property, right? He said. Too casual, like he'd practiced it in the mirror while brushing his veneers. I tilted my head. Are you asking or warning? He blinked. Didn't answer. Just gave me a tight, oily smile and walked off like he'd dropped a bomb. Problem was, I'd already disarmed it 5 years ago. By noon, Gerard had called an emergency meeting. HR, legal, IT, even Carter, the smug new legal counsel they brought in from a boutique firm in Boston. Carter had that polished, overconfident look that screamed, I've never failed publicly, and I'm overdue. They didn't invite me, but I watched it unfold from the corner office. Half the staff didn't even bother hiding the stares. I could hear the tension through the glass. Carter's voice was loud. She's going to a direct competitor. Lock her out. Unlock her records. We need to see what she's taking. Gerard didn't hesitate. Do it. They hit the kill switch at 1:17 p.m. sharp. My access vanished mid-draft. Files closed, calendar wiped, Slack logged me out. They thought they were stopping a data breach. Instead, they walked straight into a clause I'd embedded in the foundation of their house. At 1:19 p.m., Carter authorized IT to start scraping my dashboard. Client notes, segmentation models, pipeline logic, everything I'd engineered to make this firm scalable. At 1:23 p.m., he hit the first brick wall. My onboarding flow doc was encrypted. Then came the client tagging logic, flagged and locked under a private sublicense. At 1:26 p.m., I sent one email, just one line. You'll want to double-check paragraph 4 of the asset protection clause. And then I went to lunch. While they were busy ransacking my digital closets, Carter finally pulled the agreement, the merger-era contract from when Bennett and Rayner absorbed Trident Group. It was 73 pages deep. He flipped to the appendix and found it, buried in dull legalese and double spacing. Paragraph 4.1. In the event of attempted data extraction post-resignation by an employee designated as a strategic revenue custodian, all proprietary architecture, segmentation logic, and client-linked assets shall revert to the individual custodian. Non-compete protections shall be nullified, and full asset control returned to the architect of record. Translation. They didn't own what they were trying to steal. I did. Gerard stormed out of the boardroom, red-faced, yelling into his phone. I passed him in the hallway. He stopped, opened his mouth, then saw my expression. Calm, steady, like a fuse already burning towards something they couldn't stop. You planted this? He asked, half in disbelief, half in awe. I shrugged. It was approved. You signed off on it. Back in 2019, remember? He didn't. Of course he didn't. He was too busy playing golf with VCs and sending congratulatory champagne to his own inbox. Meanwhile, Carter tried to bluff. He called my phone directly. Twice. Left a voicemail that said, "Let's just be reasonable. These assets were built using company time." I texted back, and protected by company oversight, your move. By 3:45 p.m., I'd had triggered 4 security flags trying to force access encrypted directories tied to client verticals. The flags weren't passive. They generated audit trails, timestamps, admin IDs, all logged, all discoverable. That's when Carter stopped talking. Because he realized he hadn't just failed to stop me, he'd triggered a clause that reversed the power dynamic entirely. In trying to dig, he handed me ownership. And it wasn't just documents. The funnels? Mine. The onboarding logic? Mine. The client communication trees and segment priority models, all protected under my LLC through a consulting shell built years earlier, subcontracted legally, ethically, and signed off during quarterly alignment when no one in leadership read the footnotes. They didn't just ignore my resignation, they activated my rights. And every second they kept poking around made it worse. I didn't stop them. I let them sink. Quietly. Cleanly. You don't need a sword when your signature is sharper. It started with a ping from IT, then another. By the time Carter made it halfway through my folder tree, the red alerts were stacking like poker chips at a table he didn't belong at. Encrypted directories that used admin bypass? Locked. Client flowcharts he tried exporting? Flagged. Even the legacy SharePoint links redirected to placeholder stubs tied to a shell LLC they hadn't realized was mine. He thought it was a glitch, a permissions error. Typical legal arrogance, blame the system before you question your own competence. So he called IT, told them to unstick the access. They escalated it to DevSec, and that's when things went sideways. The legal safeguard trigger fired at 2:06 p.m., Carter's admin ID, flagged. An automated compliance email went straight to legal, HR, and a third-party auditor contracted during the Trident merger. That clause wasn't just boilerplate, it had teeth, and Carter had just bitten into it. That's when he finally dove into the archives. I imagine him hunched over in the glass fishbowl they call a legal suite, scrolling like a madman through PDFs, trying to find the kill switch to the bomb he'd just armed. It took him a while, but he found it. Appendix D, Merger Compliance Terms. Page 67, buried under amortization tables and asset valuations. Paragraph 4.1. In the event of data extraction during competitive resignation by a designated strategic revenue custodian, all proprietary assets, including but not limited to segmentation logic, onboarding frameworks, client tagging structures, and communication models, shall immediately revert to said custodian. All prior non-compete limitations shall be considered nullified upon breach initiation by corporate entity. Enforcement of retention or clawback shall be considered forfeited under breach trigger. Gerard was in the room when Carter read it aloud. According to someone in HR who messaged me later, he went quiet. Just sat there, one hand covering his mouth like someone had dropped a live wire into his coffee. "She planted this?" he muttered, and the answer was yes. Yes, I did, but not out of vengeance or paranoia. I planted it because I knew the people I worked for. I'd seen how they reacted under pressure, how they panicked when control slipped even a millimeter. I didn't trust them to protect me, so I built a legal perimeter they couldn't cross without setting themselves on fire. The clause was approved during the merger 5 years ago, back when they were desperate to retain Trident's top talent, and I was the only strategist who agreed to stay under their new structure. They needed continuity, I needed insurance. So I buried it in the middle of a compliance appendix and attached it to my title as Strategic Revenue Custodian, a label they gave me because it sounded fancy, without realizing it was a legal distinction that gave me ownership over everything I architected. Carter's jaw must have clenched when he saw the timestamp on the clause, June 11th, 2019, signed by Gerard, 2 board members, and Trident's general counsel. All valid, all binding. And worst of all, it was evergreen. No expiration, no caveats. They couldn't claw anything back without breaching their own agreement. By the time Carter looked up from his laptop, the temperature in that boardroom had dropped 10 degrees. Gerard tried to salvage pride. This clause, could we argue ambiguity? Carter didn't even blink. Not unless you want to litigate a contract you co-signed. Gerard turned red, then white, then nothing. The fear didn't come from the clause itself. It came from realizing how much they'd ignored, how many other things they'd rubber-stamped without reading, because they were too busy calling me family while quietly shoving me aside for a frat bro with ChatGPT and a ring light. It pulled back. Legal froze. HR sat on their hands, waiting for guidance. And I went for a walk, got a coffee, took a call from Helix's onboarding team, and finalized my partnership contract. No one stopped me. No one could, because they weren't hunting for stolen assets anymore. They were sifting through rubble, trying to figure out how a single strategist walked out the door and took their house keys with her. Carter didn't say much when he called. He didn't threaten or posture this time. No slow-rolling legalese, no fake-friendly tone, just, we've confirmed the structure. Flat. Resigned. Like he'd finally figured out he'd spent the last 48 hours trying to sue a locked vault that was bolted to the foundation I poured myself. He listed the assets in a voice so drained it almost sounded reverent. The segmentation models belong to your LLC. Pause. The onboarding automation was developed under your subcontractor agreement signed during the Trident continuity period. Pause. And the client tagging logic. He trailed off. I waited. Finally, like it hurt him, doesn't exist anywhere on our server that we can legally access without triggering breach penalties. That was the moment the game ended. They knew. Every pillar their new sales structure leaned on had my name under it, etched in legal ink and time-stamped back when they thought asset protection just meant passwords and cloud backups. By noon, I had an email from Gerard. 2 sentences. Let's just be professional about this. Swing by and we'll finalize terms. When I walked into the glass fishbowl they called the executive suite, he was pacing. Red in the face, jaw clenched like someone had dared him to smile, and he lost. On the table, a waiver, neatly printed, stapled, yellow highlighted clauses practically glowing through the glass. He pushed it toward me. "Sign this," he said. "Let's be adults." I picked it up like it was a used napkin, flipped through the pages. The waiver essentially said, I relinquish rights to all systems I designed, acknowledge they were company property, agree not to contact any past or current clients, and waive the protections under paragraph 4.1. In exchange, nothing. No severance, no equity, no goodwill, just silence. A bullet to the head of the history I wrote for them. I set it down. Folded my hands. Clause 4 says I'm not obligated, I said calmly, and you already triggered it. He exhaled sharply through his nose like I was being difficult. "No one's trying to hurt you, Alicia." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "You're not trying to hurt me. You just want to undo what you signed without reading. That's not the same thing." He stared at me like he wanted to scream, but couldn't afford to let the interns hear. Then, in the kind of move that tells you exactly what kind of CEO someone really is, he actually tried guilt. "You built this with us." "No," I said, standing. "I built it near you. That's different." I left the waiver on the table, untouched. That afternoon, at 3:37 p.m., my phone buzzed. No subject line, no greeting, just, "Effective immediately, we are terminating our engagement with Bennett and Rayner. We will not be pursuing renewal. Thank you." It was from the procurement director at our largest Fortune 100 client, the same client Kyle had pitched with his coupon book stunt, the one I'd saved from walking 6 months earlier, the one who had called me after that Zoom and said, "If you ever move firms, we're coming with you. No reasons given, no accusations, just silence with a signature." The kind of silence that weighs more than lawsuits. I didn't call Gerard, I didn't gloat, I didn't post anything on LinkedIn. I just opened my notebook, crossed their name off my old column, and wrote it into the new one. Under Helix. Under mine. No panic, no vengeance, no fireworks, just gravity, doing what gravity does, pulling things where they were always going. And me? I watched it happen like someone watching a tide come in they knew was scheduled weeks ago. I didn't flinch, didn't sigh. I just turned the page. By the next morning, the panic had shifted from private Slack channels and whispering HR huddles to the investor call calendar. Something had broken loose in the reports, and this time it wasn't just a matter of bad optics. It was blood in the water, 60%. That's what the audit revealed. 60% of Bennett and Rayner's active revenue was tagged under systems classified, by their own internal labels, as Independent Strategy Framework. My framework. The segmentation logic, the renewal triggers, the content sequences, the vertical lead qualifiers. All of it sat under custom IDs that tied back to the logic templates I'd registered and maintained. They hadn't touched the classification metadata in years because it kept printing money. Until now. Now every untouched label became a grenade. The legal team tried to reframe it. Carter, doing his best damage control routine, said the language was ambiguous, said the clause hadn't been tested in court, said the segmentation models were built during employment, therefore reasonably interpreted as shared IP. Unfortunately for Carter, I had receipts, timestamps, audit logs, weekly sign-offs, every quarterly update from the Trident contract period forward. The onboarding decks had embedded footers that said, in plain Helvetica, developed under subcontractor license, Lattice Ridge Consulting, LLC, Myla. Fully paid, fully documented, and fully signed off by Gerard and 3 other execs back in 20 when they were too eager to finalize the merger to read the subnotes. Investors saw it first. One forwarded an internal memo. Trigger language in Appendix D may transfer asset rights. Immediate need for forensic audit. Risk rating high. By lunchtime, Carter was in full retreat. Not outwardly, of course. He was still dressing the part, still carrying the legal pad around like it might save him from drowning. But the edges were showing. He stopped making eye contact, started using phrases like best case damage control. Meanwhile, Gerard was unraveling in real time. First denial, then anger, then this slow, acidic panic that seeped into every room he walked into. I passed him in the hallway and he flinched like I might breathe fire. It made a last-ditch effort that afternoon. They tried to block outgoing traffic from my old laptop, just in case, even though I'd already turned it in. Even though my exit folder had been clean, scrubbed, zipped, and archived 3 days before they even noticed I'd stopped logging in after 6 p.m. They forgot one thing. I hadn't taken anything. I didn't need to. My systems didn't require theft. They ran independently, client-facing logic loops that never lived on company hardware. I never exported data, never downloaded lists. I didn't need to because I wasn't interested in ownership. I was interested in authorship. That's what they never understood. At 4:13 p.m., an automated email went out from my Helix address. The subject line was simple. Continuity note for client transition. Inside, all client data remains solely with you. No records have been transferred or requested. All strategic assets referenced during my tenure were developed with your prior visibility and under contractually licensed terms. I have collected nothing you did not knowingly share. That email hit 27 inboxes. 27 C-level executives, procurement leads, and compliance officers across our former client base. It was the equivalent of handing every single one of them a notarized letter that said, "You're safe, you're clean, and I am not your mess." That alone bought more goodwill than anything Gerard's PR team could spin. And then came the hit. Within 24 hours of that investor memo circulating, the valuation models adjusted. A $42 million drop, on paper, in one day. Most of it tied directly to client instability and legal uncertainty surrounding asset retention. Gerard called it a temporary reaction. Carter tried to sell it as market overcorrection. But it wasn't a blip, it was a correction. A slow tilt toward truth. They built their castle on a framework they never owned. I just let gravity do the rest. No rage, no headlines, just the elegant surgical weight of well-kept records and a boundary drawn years ago by a strategist no one thought would ever walk away. But I did. And they're still trying to figure out how I didn't take anything, yet left with everything. By Thursday morning, the Slack channels at Bennett and Rayner were war zones. The leadership circle was eating itself from the inside out. Whispers turned into full-volume finger-pointing. 2 VPs resigned within hours of each other. One walked out mid-meeting after saying, "You all nodded along to the clause. Don't look shocked now." The CFO ghosted a board call entirely. People started quietly removing Bennett and Rayner from their LinkedIn bios like rats slipping off a sinking raft. I didn't need to watch it unfold. Word got to me anyway. Outside counsel, an old shark from a litigation firm they'd never used before, was brought in to try and smother the clause. But after a 48-hour comb-through of the original Trident merger documents and every renewal trail since, their verdict was simple and cold. It holds. It's enforceable. You triggered it, she walks. Carter resigned the same day. Didn't even finish the investor memo, just packed up and vanished before 3:00 p.m. One of the assistants later told me he left a single note on his desk. "I told you to read the contracts." No signature. That night, Gerard called me. Twice. Back to back, voicemail both times. The first was this forced calm nonsense, like he was trying to rebuild a bridge he'd already blown up. "Hey, Alicia, let's talk this through. I think we both want what's best for the clients." The second was quieter, angrier, no greeting, just, "You made your point." I never called him back, because I wasn't interested in points. I was interested in peace, and I'd earned it. Monday came. Helix onboarded me in less than an hour. They flew me to San Francisco, handed me a badge, and walked me past a glass conference room already labeled with my name. I didn't even flinch when I saw the title on the door. Partner. Not director, not strategist, not consultant. Partner. A full seat at the table, profit share included, decision-making authority guaranteed. It wasn't performative. It wasn't symbolic. They knew what they were getting, and they'd built the role around me, not the other way around. I sat down at my new desk, sunlight pouring in from a window that overlooked the bay, and booted up the onboarding terminal. My inbox was already full. Not chaos, not fires to put out, just clarity. Welcome messages. Clean handoffs, smart questions. One email was from their CTO. The subject line read, "Just read what you built. Holy hell, let's talk infrastructure expansion. No drama, no groveling, just respect." I didn't toast myself. I didn't post anything. I didn't need to, because power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a clean signature, a locked clause, a flight booked without asking. Sometimes it's silence from the man who used to call you family and now can't even say your name without tasting the blood in his mouth. I hadn't just left the building. I'd built the exit and walked through it with the lights still on behind me. By the end of the second week, the first client made it official. Then the second, then the third. All 3 were marquee accounts, long-standing, multi-year, multi-million-dollar retainers, the kind of clients that earned Bennett and Rayner their credibility in the first place, the kind of clients I'd onboarded, grown, and stabilized with systems they still didn't fully understand, even now. One sent a polite change of vendor notice, another used the phrase realignment of strategic direction, but the third didn't bother sugarcoating it. Their COO emailed directly, "We're following Alicia. Not a debate, not a threat, just a direction." Within 10 business days, Helix had absorbed over $7.2 million in annual recurring revenue from Bennett and Rayner, cleanly, contractually, and without a single lawsuit filed. By day 12, Gerard's name was removed from the press copy of an industry panel he was scheduled to speak at. Someone on LinkedIn noticed. Screenshots started circulating. Then came the rumors. The board ordered an internal audit, quietly at first. But nothing stays quiet when your house is already on fire. They found it. Not the clause. That had already been confirmed. What they found this time was the neglect. The file history in the document repository showed the last time paragraph 4.1 had been opened. 6 years ago. It hadn't even been reviewed during contract renewals. No one had tagged it. No one had run it past compliance. It was an intern, God bless her curiosity, who found the metadata. She was supposed to be shadowing Carter's replacement, but got stuck sorting archived board approvals. She clicked the wrong folder, found the original Trident integration packet, and saw it. One clause, one digital timestamp, one name in the approval log that had been quietly attached to every subsequent strategic asset for half a decade. Mine. The board didn't yell. They didn't need to. They called an emergency session that Friday. Gerard didn't speak until they asked him to. His defense? We assumed legacy clauses were non-binding. That's what finally did it. Not the money lost, not the clients gone, the assumption. The arrogance of believing a clause is just decoration until someone decides to enforce it. The official board statement used the phrase gross strategic oversight. Clean, clinical, exactly the kind of language designed to end a career without generating noise. By Monday, his bio was removed from the company site. No announcement, just deletion. The final investor update included a one-sentence postmortem. Most clauses are wallpaper until someone leans on them. And that was it. No fanfare, no slow clapping in the rain, just digital silence where his legacy used to live. At Helix, nobody celebrated. There were no victory laps, no champagne toasts, just progress, realignment. The day Gerard stepped down, I was in a meeting with the product team discussing how to rebuild the segmentation logic for a health tech vertical we were onboarding. Someone mentioned the client was impressed by our acquisition efficiency. I didn't say a word, because none of this was revenge. It was gravity, and I had simply let them fall. My office in Palo Alto wasn't much. Bare walls, clean desk, one plant I kept forgetting to water, no trophies, no framed quotes, no shrine to what came before. Just quiet. And space. I didn't decorate because I didn't need to. That office wasn't a monument. It was a command center. By Thursday, the new client dashboard showed 7 converted accounts, not leads. Signed, 5-year deals, each one wired into the segmentation flows I'd rebuilt from scratch. Faster this time, tighter, refined from everything I'd learned when no one at Bennett and Rayner was watching. And they still weren't. Not really. Because while they were busy trying to reverse engineer the damage, I was already 3 steps into something better. Not bigger. Just mine. That afternoon, I got an email from someone I hadn't heard from in over a year. Used to be a junior strategist under me before she jumped to a different firm. The subject line was short. How did you pull that off? I stared at it for a moment, then replied, I didn't pull anything. I just let them dig. Send. No winks, no smiley faces, just truth. They thought I stole something, that I dismantled a machine from the inside, that I tricked them, but I didn't. I built it right in front of them, with permission, with signatures, with full transparency and clearer documentation than their entire legal department ever knew what to do with. They handed me the keys and then got mad when I locked the door behind me. The final contract came in Friday afternoon. Health Access, our largest win yet. Fully transitioned, fully onboarded, they didn't even blink at the terms, said the handoff had been smoother than any vendor migration they'd ever experienced. I stared at the signed agreement on the screen. No thrill, no surge of satisfaction, just peace. That's what they never understood back at Bennett and Rayner. They thought the opposite of chaos was power, control. It's not. It's clarity. Helix didn't need me to burn anything down. They just gave me the match and trusted I'd know when not to light it. At 6:02 p.m., I shut my laptop. The plant in the corner was still half dead, leaning like it knew I didn't have the heart to fake nurturing anymore. I didn't care. It could lean. I wasn't here to impress anyone. No press release, no keynote, no humble brag post about the journey. Just this. A quiet desk, a stronger contract, and 7 clients who followed me without needing to ask why. Because when you build things the right way, layered, protected, signed, and clear, there's nothing to fight over, nothing to reclaim, and nothing anyone can steal. You can't steal what someone already walked away from.